is happening because somehow Democrats and Republicans are equally obstructionists. It's just not true. You've got some Republicans right now who are suggesting they will impeach Hillary. They don't necessarily know why, but they're just going to impeach her. Imagine if you had sitting Democratic senators saying that about Donald Trump. Before he was even elected, saying he will be impeached.
I got to say, first of all, he can't wait to go home. And secondly, he's gotten, maybe he's always been funny, but he's been really funny lately. Anyway, that, of course, the president campaigning for Hillary Clinton, or maybe even more condemning the other party. That was in Florida today. And he's teeing off on Republicans, but he's also had some very strong words for the FBI director, James Comey.
We don't operate on innuendo. We don't operate on incomplete information. We don't operate on leaks. We operate based on concrete decisions that are made. When this was investigated thoroughly the last time, the conclusion of the FBI, the conclusion of the Justice Department, the conclusion of repeated congressional investigations was that she had made some mistakes, but that there wasn't anything there that was prosecutable.
The president also made a direct plea, Dom, to the African-American electorate. And he said, if you don't basically turn out and vote this time, and again, there was concerns that they could be off by as much as 10%, we'll find out soon enough, that you basically are voting to undo the work that I did for 8 years. There was also a couple other news items. Again, Donald Trump condemned it, his campaign did, but the KKK endorsed him. You also had a black church that was burned down in Mississippi, and on the side of the building, vote Trump. And again, we don't know, what the optics look, what the motivation was. We don't know. Do you think that there's going to be a coherent drive to get out, not just the black vote, but they'll be motivated to get out for reasons more than her, but just what they're worried about him?
Well, number one, African Americans should be much more motivated than just her, meaning Hillary Clinton, to vote in this election. The stakes are enormously high. I listened to a spot Hillary Clinton ran targeted towards the black community in Pennsylvania. It was hard hitting. And I didn't even know that Trump had called President Obama the most ignorant president in history. I heard the tape with his voice saying it. So the bad news is black turnout, as of yesterday, was a little low. The good news in early voting, the good news is the much higher Latino vote, all right, we know that's going for Hillary Clinton, and we know the black vote's going for Hillary, but that offsets any low numbers. So there's a lot on the table, and when the president goes before his crowd at these colleges, yes, you may not have regular voters there, maybe young people, but that's reaching the barbershops, the beauty shops, and African-American communities. What he's doing, 5 events over the next couple of days, and appearing with Hillary Clinton in Philadelphia on Monday night with the First Lady, and all those events the First Lady did, that is directly aimed at the black community to say, wake up. If you think you got it bad now, wait until you see what happens when Donald Trump is elected.
Mike, there's been this debate I've heard, whether it's overstated or understated, the importance of get out the vote campaign and ground campaigns, right? There's going to be a push to get the Sunday crowd to go directly from the Sunday services, especially in African American, and drive them directly to the polls for the states that do allow early voting, et cetera. Where do you think it falls? Is it overstated? People don't need somebody to get them out to the polls here, that the ground campaigns are overvalued, or not?
No, not at all. Look at George W. Bush's campaign in his re-elect. But for the fact that he had a phenomenal ground operation, phenomenal data analytics program. I mean, he was able to micro-target to such a degree to get voters. So, I mean, it was a tight race. Came down to one state at the end of the day, and he won it because he had the advantage on the ground. Look at what they're doing. So you have Obama out there. You have the First Lady out there. You have Joe Biden out there. You have Bernie Sanders out there. You have Elizabeth Warren out there. And every time they put 10,000 people into a stadium, there are also about 25 buses outside that stadium for when you come out to get on that bus and go to the polls. I mean, it cannot be overstated. At the end of the day, I mean, it's all well and good to have rallies, but if you're not delivering, and frankly, if you think about the Democratic primary, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, look, what wound up happening? Bernie had great rallies. He didn't actually have a really good operation to turn those rallies into votes, and that's why he lost the primary. You cannot underestimate the ground game.
There also seems like there's an increasing voter suppression effort that's coming from the right in some of these urban communities too. And I'm not just talking about things like voter ID, but poll watchers who, official poll watchers who may or may not be armed in states where they can have open carry. There's even a campaign going around in places like Twitter saying, hey, don't wait online to vote. Just text your vote for Hillary to this number and your vote will be counted. It's like the old version of be sure to vote on Sunday, November 7th, which is the wrong day.
With the rig stuff.
Right.
I'm not buying the orchestrated thing. I mean, I'm not suggesting that black voters are going to come out en masse for Donald Trump. But I've got to think that there's a profound disappointment in the black community. I'm I'm asking Dom about the last 8 years, where they got a black president. African Americans got a first black president, but it didn't translate in the pocketbook for a variety of reasons. I would have to think that a lot of motivated black voters in the last 8 years are not motivated this time.
But I think if Donald Trump gave the argument to them, and we were talking about this 6 months ago, right, Dom? If Donald Trump made a more coherent argument to them, other than, hey, you live in hell right now, anything's better than what you got, trust me, he might have had a better shot, let alone some of the language he said, including with the birther stuff against the president. He had a chance to do better, I think, than even Bush. Yep. But he's done everything in his power to burn the bridges, right?
It's not just Donald Trump, though. I mean, keep in mind, for 6 of his 8 years, Barack Obama has been up against in a Congress that has obstructed him, questioned his legitimacy, disrespected him while giving a State of the Union address. I mean, so I hear you on sort of maybe there are some disappointments about what actually came to fruition under this president, but I bet you there is greater disappointment in the level of respect that the African American community feels like the first black president got.
Definitely. Black Americans have looked at Obama's tenure over the last 8 years, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that this president was not treated like any other president prior to him. The question becomes why. Newsflash, perhaps your assessment might be correct, but newsflash, black folks are not voting for Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. But by staying home, that could be a vote for Trump.
Staying home, that's the right.
But asking voters of any background to sort of make the analysis that Mike was talking about, hey, most of the time it's just things are better or things are worse, and that's how I'm going to base my decision on the top race. Asking them to sort of take into account the obstructionism of Congress, regardless of the voter group that you're talking about, might be asking a lot.
It's not so much the obstruction of Congress in the traditional sense where we talk about gridlock. It is the actual questioning of the legitimacy of the president.
Yes.
Andrew, it's interesting because I've heard on both sides, Alberto Gonzalez, for crying out loud, let alone to people in justice departments over both administrations, recent Republican and Democrat, saying they don't know what Comey was doing. And he certainly put himself out way over his skis this close to an election. I get that. But is there a part of you that says the more the president goes out and attacks Comey personally, who everyone thought well of up until the past week? You may not have agreed with everything he did, but at the end of the day, people thought this was a dedicated public servant. They risk almost going too far?
I think there is some risk of that. I mean, the Times poll that came out today basically said that the FBI stuff and the late stuff on Trump really hasn't been factored in by most voters. Most voters had made their minds up and it really didn't impact their decisions. And in fact, the impact of the FBI scandal on Hillary was less than the impact of some of the tapes that came out for Donald Trump. So I think Hillary would be well served to let this one go. I don't think we're going to hear more and more about this. I think you'll start to hear a little bit less. If the president wants to go out and say that, I think that's fine. But again, I think there is a risk of sort of continuing to bring it up if they keep mentioning it too often.
Right, but you're citing that 6 in 10 voters say this doesn't affect their decision in the race. But that means it affects 4.
I read the same way you did,
It affects 4. That's stunning.
And that's assuming that you buy those numbers to begin with. To say that this has not impacted the race is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I wonder, so, because I was wondering the same thing. Does this make sense? And the only thing I can come up with, and there are smart people running these operations, the only thing I can come up with is now we're at a part where we need to just energize the base. So an attack on Comey and his decision-making here is going to be good for revving up the base of the Democratic Party. But I also think, mean, even Westchester's own Jeanine Pirro criticized Comey for his decision here. And I think that there is bipartisan appreciation for the need for, there are so few institutions in the American government that are seen as above politics anymore. And I think that Comey, whether it was malicious or not, made a fundamental mistake in what he did. And I think both sides agree with that and feel like it could forever sort of tinge the FBI. I mean, forever, you know, I suppose we have Hoover, but I think that it forever could sort of get in the way of the reputation of the FBI as above politics. And that's why people like Jeanine Pirro, that's why folks on the right and the left have been very critical of that decision.
And they have. I'm just saying the attacks on him almost making him sound like a hack. Even if, you know,
it's got to be the base.
You think so? Okay.
But have you ever seen this late in a presidential race, 12-point shift? Like there's a huge amount available. Shifting back and forth.
I think it certainly had impact. Here's the only thing I'm a little bit surprised at, and there's still time. I would have figured there'd be another shoe to drop on the Donald. And I know a little bit about what they have for Oppo research and stuff. We talked about it before. I thought some of the tapes of, you know, maybe him using the N-word or something, allegedly, could have come out. I mean, do you still think we're going to hear something else? There's another chapter here in this ugly saga here before Tuesday?
I was sure there was something. In fact, I thought this young woman who claimed that she was raped when she was 13 was about to hold a press conference, pulled it down at the last minute, claimed it was because she was getting all kinds of threats, so she didn't want to show her actual face. I mean, look, I just, barring, you know, someone actually being found on tape murdering someone at this point. And even then, I'm not sure Trump might be okay.
That wouldn't
Right.
The
The Clinton body count would be nothing at that point.
But I think there'll be something this
Something's
weekend.
gonna drop.
Yeah.
Remember the Billy Bush Trump tape dropped on a Friday night.
When was the DWI for George W? That was
I think
2 or
it was
3 days before?
the Friday before the election, I believe, on Bush. Something will drop probably tomorrow night, but you can bet your life on it. I agree with you. Something's going to drop on guess who? Donald Trump before the election.
As if it couldn't get uglier. All right, coming up next, we got new developments in the Bridgegate trial. We are at the federal courthouse in Newark with very latest. Stay with us.